leave some room for people to move out to potential other sessions so that the room is more quietly. Thank you very much. So, I should say Jean or Jeffrey, right? So you can choose which name, but please feel free to start your introduction. Yeah.
Yes, hello, my name is Jeffrey Hagen. I'm the territory lead for ML6. We are a company creating custom AI solutions for a lot of other companies. Yeah, that's about it.
And I'm Jacqueline from Autoscriber. We build software that makes use, among others, generative AI to automate the note-taking process for doctors, so reducing administration and improving data quality in healthcare.
Erdinç Saçan, lecturer at Fontys ICT, a member of the Knowledge Center AI and the Research Center Lectoraat AI.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you. Well, this is true what it says. I'm Mariana. I work at VanderLande for 11 years. VanderLande, for those who don't know the company, we provide material handling solutions. And I am in the innovation department. In this role, maybe not very descriptive, but basically what I do is exploring new promising ideas and or technologies and try to demonstrate through tangible examples what it can bring.
Thank you, and again, a warm welcome for the panel, right? Yeah. Thanks. Yeah, great. Yeah, perfect timing. Hey, before we start, the first question I have, right? So we spoke about the human factors of AI, and you are all operating in the field of AI. I hope the introduction already reveals a little bit of the different potential perspective of what they are putting go-to market. So I'm very curious in the area of VanderLande. You are implementing algorithms as part of your products. What are the first issues you encounter as an R&D manager and R&D technology owner putting algorithms as part of your products?
Well, the challenges that I encounter, at least in my area of work, I think sometimes losing speed. Because when you are innovating and experimenting with things like generative AI, I think it's really important to focus and go super fast, like faster than ever before. So this is what I find very important. And we are also quite a large organization, so this complexity sometimes creates this challenge that I explained. Yeah. But this is not the only one.
You know, why is it important to go fast, to have speed?
Yeah, because we are trying new things that are not existing yet, and the faster, as we say, faster you fail, the better. Of course, we don't want to fail too often, but that's actually where it comes from. We want to very quickly validate whether what we are doing is in the right direction, and then, yeah, adapt.
Is already the culture at VanderLande, because I think we spoke about organizational culture, ready for fail fast, fail often?
Yeah, that's what we are trying to foster. Yeah.
Okay. Maybe going to Jeffrey, right? So you are consulting in a lot of different industries and organizations. Do you already find the right culture at every organization you consult with?
I would say it depends a bit. So there are, of course, companies which are very digital natives, as we call them. So they're very used to working in this with a lot of data, also in marketing and retail. And those industries are very fast. Also in the commercial, they use commercial models to, for example, increase their sales and those kind of things. Yeah. They have more like the manufacturing companies, for example. They're a bit more conservative because they would like to understand why something is the case. So indeed, like you cannot just produce a model which will give an output. No, it really needs to be explainable. So you need to be able to really explain why a certain model gives an output. And there are ways to do this. Also in the whole generative AI space, this is definitely possible to do. So I would say diverse very much per industry.
So I think what I got back from your feedback is that manufacturing is differently in adopting AI/generative AI capabilities. What are your potential barriers that you found in this kind of industry? Is it cultural? Is it technology? Is it quality? Is it cost? Where are those conversations that you need to face?
Yeah, I think it's more about trustworthy AI, and that's what was already discussed a bit. But like these generative models, like if you look at, like, for example, ChatGPT, they will always produce an answer, right? So they have also a tendency to hallucinate. There are ways to mitigate this. So you have more like, if you want a generative model to give answer on a question that you are having, maybe about doing maintenance or maybe any other question that you might have.
Yeah.
You want to maybe connect it to your knowledge base. So there are more like traditional, is a big word, but more like traditional kind of search engines, which you can put in front of those kind of models. So basically you have a question, you first do more like maybe a search, like a semantic search, and find documents that are relevant. Based on these documents, you give it also as an input to the large language models. And then give an answer based on this document. And by doing that, you can actually link it to the source. And you know where this answer is coming from. And this will generate much more trust in believing that answer is true.
Yeah. And you're saying that is opposite for marketing organizations.
In marketing is also important, of course, but like these models have a more general understanding of language. So I mean, in customer care, they are already able to understand and communicate like back and forward, basically. Of course, you still want the answer to be true, so you could use similar technologies, but a lot of use cases are already, you can solve them with out-of-the-box solutions, like, for example, AWS or any other party provides.
Yeah, interesting you touched upon human-machine interface, right? And then I would like to pivot into Jacqueline, right? So your Autoscriber is around a human-machine interface. So what is your perspective in your field of expertise, because I think it's around healthcare, on adopting AI/generative AI capabilities?
Yeah, it's actually the human-machine interface is a good starting point, because initially we were a little bit worried in the healthcare sector about especially the older generation of doctors, that we thought maybe they won't be as open to using this new kind of technology. But we've actually found the opposite to be true, in that the older generation is way more excited about our technology, because it's a lot more natural to interact with a computer by using natural language, because that's the way that we communicate with each other. And they like this a lot more than trying to click through legacy systems that they now use and try to fill in information in hundreds of different fields and forms and trying to navigate their way around millions of clicks just to log one data point, when the solution that we provide is to interface with the same kind of technology, but just using your normal voice, your normal speech, and it basically does it for you. So we found that the adoption on the user level is actually very positive, very eager. Nobody likes to do admin, and if we can take that problem away by actually giving them just an easier interface to do what they're already doing, they're very excited about that.
Are you now trying to explain that your product fit is so good in your market that you don't have any social barriers of adoption?
That's a very hyperbolic statement, but I'll take it. I think where we do encounter some issues are more on the management front. So we work a lot with hospitals, and they, as are we, are concerned about the kind of data that we work with. Obviously, being in healthcare is a very sensitive domain, so we spend a lot of time, energy, and resources on trying to make our solution trustworthy. There's a lot of talk about trust. So I think that's the biggest barrier that we face. But on the actual user front, it's mostly euphoria that we are encountering.
Sure, go ahead.
Promised we can do whatever.
I've promised that they can ask questions to each other, right? So
because I was triggered. You said that you were surprised that older generation was more enthusiastic. So I was wondering, like, did you figure out why that is? Why the younger generation? Is it like maybe they take it as a normal thing? Do you know why?
I think it's just because they are better at using the technologies that they have already. So the younger generation types a lot faster and is a lot more familiar with these kinds of computer interfaces that they now use. Whereas older generation maybe started out their career on pen and paper, and now all of a sudden have to navigate through.
So for them, the value is much more clear or bigger.
Yeah. So for someone that types with 2 fingers, it's a lot bigger of a step than someone that's looking at the patient while they're typing.
Yeah, how many fingers do I use? I don't know.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Good question. So the younger generation. Yeah. So you are responsible for making sure that younger generation is more effective. So what I'm curious at, right? So we talk about older generation, all kind of difficulties, some euphoria regarding some, let's call it typing with 2 fingers, but you're really building up that new generation who is grown up a moment in time and go to the, let's call it, employment environment where they will leverage those new technologies in AI. So what's your experience with this young generation?
I'm a lecturer, and I learned ChatGPT from my students. So
Oh.
30th November 2022, and 1 day later, 2 days later, we saw our students working. And then if you walked, and then they changed the Alt tab, they changed the screen. So I sat next to them and I said, "What's this? Tell me." And then we learned it and used it with a couple of colleagues. After 1 week, 2 weeks, we sent a letter to our how you call that, the CVB, the bosses of the school, Fontys University of Applied Sciences, to tell them, to warn them, this will have impact on our education. And we are not the only one. In the New Zealand, in South Africa, and in Canada, all the education field has the same questions. What can we do with the take-home exams? Or how can we give them or let them write essays without or with using generative AI? So the students are much faster. The youngsters are much faster than the teachers, okay? With respect for all our teachers, of course, you have some teachers who are doing a really nice job, but we give courses and lectures on secondary schools, on vocational schools, and other University of Applied Sciences, and in a field like with 100 people, and if I ask who has an account on ChatGPT, only 30 or 40% of the teachers will share their hands because of the lack of time or the anxiousness for new things. Because some of them came to me, a teacher who was above our age, he said, "I am happy that I can send an email, and you are now asking me to use these kinds of tools." So we have to educate also our education and our teachers with this.
So it's quite a journey. So I have more like a personal question. So last week my son approached me that he needed to build a poster for one of his, let's call it, CKV.
Art, something with art.
Kunstculturele vorming. It was interesting, so when I said, let's sit together, let's use DAL-E, and I said, no, that's not allowed. He said, but if we use this platform, that's not in the list of excluded tools. So, how do you make sure, because I think that's also interesting, right? So it's about, is it something you are on the mind, like how do you copyright, privacy, data sources, uniqueness, is it something that you will allow for? I'm very curious about your opinion about how would it augment students going forward versus that they still need to learn all the, let's call it, stuff that's widely available and easy access.
Very nice question. What we see is that we can't stop or forbid tools like AI, generative tools. Some schools tried. Italy tried for a couple of weeks, and after 48 hours, Pizza GPT was launched. So to let the people use GPT without going to the OpenAI tool, what we see, what we did as Fontys University, we stopped in September with the Turnitin AI cheat check tool. There are a lot of cheat checkers, companies who says we can check if something's written with AI or not. We are advising our teachers don't use it because of the false positives, etc. To make sure that if the companies are using it, and we are preparing students for this professional field, they have to use generative AI. So of course we have to teach them about ethics, about bias, and about hallucination, and to double check what is spitting out from these tools. Sometimes they copy even the text as an AI language model, and they forget to delete it. So as a teacher, and of course, if you receive a letter from a student with the first sentence in Dutch, it's easy to say, ik hoop dat het u in goede gezondheid treft, or something like, I hope it will receive you in health. Then we know it's generated by ChatGPT.
It's obvious, right? So yeah. So also it's for me difficult, right? So as a father, just to raise my kids, telling them that they should leverage it, but how do I know I do right? So what I'm curious at, if you're working with organizations, Jeffrey, right? So how do you know it's right for them? How do you know you are doing the right thing as a supplier, as a vendor, helping organizations to be more competitive, better than the other one?
Yeah, I think the student example is it's a productivity tool in the end, right? Which companies use to increase the amount of work that they can do. That can be on coding, but it can also be in writing emails. So I think, it's important that you keep this human in the loop and educate indeed the person who's using it. Like, okay, indeed there is things like hallucination. You still need to you can use it, but you need to check yourself if it's correct or not. So I think that's very important. Also, especially in the educational system, there are of course ways to also examine students in a different way, how they should, if they are skilled or if they've built skills or not. Of course, you can do it in a written form, but you can do it also in other forms. So I think in the educational system specifically, you need to really change that. But on a company level, I think, you should use it in a similar way. Like if you use, for example, things like Copilot or Cody or to help you write code, you should still check if the output makes sense and if it's correct. So you need some kind of expertise to do that.
So what I'm curious at, right, so it's really more like, and again, I'm known to deviate from the question list. I'm curious about, okay, I think skills is important, right? We talk about, but what I'm curious about is my own question, like valorization from skills, like the value of knowledge. How do I still know that the doctor that is using platforms is a good doctor? Because they're being augmented by generative AI. So how do I know that the individual who's assessing me is really have the capabilities of being a good doctor?
It's an interesting point. It's also something that we've been thinking about, what is the next step that our technology enables, and because at the moment we're just reducing administration, and that's our main selling point. But what we're actually really doing is we're getting better data into the system, and what that allows us to do is to actually move towards data-driven healthcare or precision medicine. That is something that everybody dreams about, and I think that we're able to outperform doctors in that way if we are to leverage the capabilities of machines. I was at a healthcare conference a couple of months ago, and they showed statistics of doctors versus AI models in predicting the lifespan of cancer patients. And they showed the AUC score, which is a score basically scaled from 0 to 100, if you look at it like that. And if you get a score of 0.5, it's random guessing, so you may as well have flipped a coin. And doctors scored 0.45 on the scale, which means you would have been really better off flipping a coin. And the AI machines had a score of, I think, 0.9 or 0.88 or something like that. So the reason why they were outperformed so drastically by the AI is because there are so many different factors that influence something like your life expectancy after a certain diagnosis. And humans are, according to the presentation I listened to, only able to account 5 different factors at one time. And you get very good doctors, but they're typically very good because they have good intuition, and that's shaped by the experiences that they've had as a doctor and all of the cases that they've seen. So if they are confronted with a case that they've never seen, they will not be as good at that as at something else. Whereas if we equip them with AI that has seen a lot of different cases and give them that extra bit of information, I think that you will get a lot better results for the patient.
So in this case, prioritizing, of course, the patient itself. But how do we make sure, and that's also curious for Mariana and also Erdinç, is how do you make sure then education catch up? Because a lot of the knowledge is being captured already into systems and applications. How do you make sure you follow that? How do you make sure your workforce or the students are ready? Let's start with you.
Yeah, well, maybe just start with a personal example. So what I try to do, like always stay fit, not only physically, because I also sport a lot, but also mentally. And so I follow this guy, Andrew. I think you also use his reports in the presentation. So take courses regularly. And we have a community, AI community at VanderLande, and colleagues also who are not in that community. But what I'm trying to do to inspire and to motivate them also by example and just explaining why I believe this is important. But of course, this is very bottom-up approach. I think it has some limits at some point. So I think it's also important that it comes from top down, so that we really not force, but something, like find a way how to stimulate that people are training, that they are obtaining new skills. And with Gen AI, I think there are a lot of enthusiasts who there is a lot of desire to learn things, but there are also a lot of people who still not convinced that they need to find this 3 weeks to spend on that beautiful course.
So interesting, you're saying bottom up, right? Sorry, top down. Management needs to be aware, make sure that they know what's going on, facilitate time and development. But the story of Erdinç is like, okay, hey, we had creative students starting to use some tools and platforms, and I say, that's interesting. That sentence in that letter is something that I don't recognize. So what's your view and take on it?
We are really lucky as a university that we work with more than 100 companies, maybe also companies that are here, because we need companies, we need professionals. I'm now 13 years of a teacher, lecturer, and before I worked in the commercial world. But I don't want to become a teacher who say after 25 years, still giving courses about books. So we need the companies, and we also know that the smaller companies come to us, asking us for help. So the smaller, the MKB, I don't know the English word for that, but yes, you understand. The smaller companies, they are asking us. So it's a real new field, okay, 11 months. Sometimes I speak about generative AI in the history, and then it's about 4 or 5 months before. So we are cooperating with them. We learn from the companies, and the companies are learning from us. But I think there must be something like a Delta plan for AI. There are some initiatives. We missed the boat with the social media and the usage and the addiction and the bad things about that. We missed the boat with the smartphones. So now schools are talking about to forbid smartphones when the parents are using it all the day. And now I hope that we don't miss the field within the generative AI to teach our youngsters, parents, and even everybody about the problems or what you can do with this. Yeah. So we need something, and I hope the government and the municipalities and the companies help us, the education field, to think about it. So digital wisdom, media literacy, talk about, there are youngsters that believe, please don't discuss about this now, that the pyramids in Cairo are made by aliens. So, and then not about the youngsters who think about the flat earth movement. So we have to teach them the fact-checking, what kind of sources there are there. If we all knew about this Google, if you search Jiangmen Square Beijing, you get a fake image from this tank man. And it was on Google, and Google deleted. But what's real and what's fake?
That's interesting, right? So what's real, what's fake? But interestingly, I'm curious about the fears that organization faces. Coming back on the barriers. So, Jeffrey, I think you go out, right? So I would be curious, and you don't need to disclose any names here, but I'm very curious. What are your top 3 difficulties you face between, for example, leadership and the SMEs, or do you see still caveats or gaps that you need to close, or organization needs to close between leadership, structure, promises that you cannot make reality?
That's a good question. I'm thinking, it was a bit already said before, but I think it's important to start where you want to add value, right? There were a lot of companies, and it was with Gen AI, but also with the more traditional machine learning, that companies said, yeah, we just want to use AI. And I think that's never a good case. You should always think, okay, how can I add business value for my company? And really start from that aspect, and indeed, do your own internal research of defining, okay, how can I do that? In terms of, I think, coming back to the learning aspect, I think you learn most by doing things, right? So I think 70% of what you learn is just by getting your hands dirty and using the technology. I think 20% is roughly about trainings, and 10% is about reading. It's typically what you can do. So I think it's, of course, important to understand and provide from a leadership point of view that, okay, teach your workforce about what is Gen AI, what can it do, but indeed then also provide the right opportunities that you define projects that a cross-functional team can work on. Also maybe look at partners in the industry who have a lot of experience, so you can start building together and really get hands-on experience, because that's the way that you can learn fastest, in my opinion.
Would you say that there is a kind of FOMO in the industry, a fear of missing out? So the real, let's call it barriers, they are no longer there? Because I think, just to be honest, you will go into a company and you will replace human interaction. I have a personal example that had during a large merger and acquisition. We had a very intelligent guy, just came from school, right? And we were doing a project on optimization of license usage because it was a user business case. And he was listening for an hour to that individual, of that, let's call it, very senior individual who was doing that for years. And he said, "Wow, if you give me a day, I can replace your work with an algorithm." It took me 6 months to convince that guy to document his knowledge. So I'm very curious about your feedback you have as an organization, because you come in, and are you always perceived friendly, or are you, yeah?
You mean by the end users then? So I think that a lot of companies are indeed realizing, like, we need to do something. So there's indeed sometimes also a bit of fear of missing out, but like Gen AI is not always the best solution for everything. It's just a tool that you can use. I like we try to more educate like the companies that we work with, like, okay, what are you actually trying to solve? What are your challenges? And then we're going to look, okay, is Gen AI then the right solution or not? And I think that's important. Your other question probably refers more to, are people afraid of using it? But I think, especially the things which are repetitive, a lot of humans also don't like to do that.
Okay.
So you can also use generative AI to, for example, help you write these emails or help you write code. And this will release your of time that you can actually do on more design thinking or maybe other tasks that are more creative. And I think a lot of people like to do that as well.
Okay. I'm very curious to your field of expertise, because you're driving algorithms into, so your products will eventually also, I think, find in practice, into go-to-market, you will find that you will...
I really hope
go there. And go to market, but also replace individuals who are doing heavy lifting and all kind of stuff. So do you experience in your role difficulties to get those algorithms or those products, those AI, into the products and then into the field?
Well, difficulty in what sense?
In driving adoption of your users, of the product development, or...
Yeah, I think like what I find personally important, and in general I think what matters, is to think about the value, the final value that you are delivering. So, and for example, if we are working on actually a real example that we are working on right now, on something like a operational body, AI assistant that can help a person to run the complex system that we actually provide. So the solution that we are trying to create is not like going to replace the person, but only help the person to do really the valuable work. What is challenging, I think is also to be expected, is like to get to this really valuable and usable solution, you need to iterate. And it's not like you know from the start what exactly you need to make. You need to loop your user very often to like show, is this really helping you? And just coming up with the right questions to make sure that you are creating something useful and not get like discouraged somewhere halfway.
So develop in 6 months in the back office and then move out and then show this is how we're going to do your work. So really involve...
that's not the way to go. No,
it's
just really ideally from the start involve those who will use it and show like if you and I agree totally, you should start with valuable use case. And sometimes you see this technology push activities, how we call them, where we start with the technology and what it can do, but still very quickly, if you want to pitch it to someone who makes a final decision, I will sponsor it, you need to wrap it in a business case, and it better has a good business value. Otherwise, like, why to focus on that?
Slowly but steadily, we're at the end of the panel. My conclusion would be there's currently a certain level of FOMO, where there's a fear of missing out within organizational leaders and experts who want to join. Right? It's important to start with value, right? So what is the value conversation? What are the right use cases that will help individuals? Augmentation is still, I think, something you refer to, right? So it augments themselves. And now, of course, I was trying to provoke you on what if you would displace individuals, would you still find the same level of FOMO? What I'm still unsure about. But I think it's the right time on augmenting and helping individuals to adopt generative AI or AI in general to become better. Interesting to share use cases on the healthcare. And Erdinç, thank you very much for your student use cases and interesting dynamics. And I hope I have some feedback from my son too, right? Jeffrey and Mariana, thank you very much for your participation. And let's move on.